The Dopamine Apes. Thank you for reading this far and taking the plunge into ideas. Research shows that only 19% of adults actively read on a daily basis, and most for a measly 7 minutes. In fact, 24% of Americans state that they haven't bothered to read a book in the last year, while the average Netflix viewer manages to squeeze in 2 hours of content on their couch every day. Congratulations, this means that you are part of an elite group of readers and should feel positive about your commitment. If you truly believe the compliment in the preceding paragraph, you probably received a small jolt of the chemical dopamine into your brain as part of your naturally evolved and complex chemical reward mechanism. It is a neurotransmitter released into our brains to help promote positive behavior and increase the likelihood of repeat behavior. It may also simply reinforce the pleasure principle. In other words, making the good feel really, really good. From a pharmacological perspective, dopamine both anticipates and rewards outcomes. Therefore, besides pleasure, it influences our motivations and emotions both pre and post the decision to act. As an example, imagine the feeling of anticipation when a chrome ball bounces and spins above the numbered pockets on a roulette wheel after placing a sizable bet. This feeling can be the rush of a dopamine response. Whether we win or lose, our brains can be stimulated by the activity alone, regardless of the result. Dopamine is what feeds the Pavlov's dog that barks in our brain. It's the compound that makes us sit up and beg, and also believe that we are good dogs for doing so. It's instant, addictive, uncontrollable, and it deliberately feeds our ego every day. Dopamine was designed by evolution to help optimize and memorize survival strategies like sex, food, sociability, and generally encourage the right choices to live better and longer. While other mammals emit the same compounds, none do so quite like human beings. It helps the brain reinforce and then repeat the positive behavior we have discovered or learned. Dopamine production in the brain is associated with music, learning, gambling, food, social interaction, love, orgasms, and acceptance. It therefore plays an important role in idea selection. Faced with a choice of ideas, selecting one and having a positive response from that selection means that dopamine may play a role in helping to promote the same selection in the future. It works perfectly for shaping and reinforcing survival strategies for our species until we artificially manipulate it, and then it doesn't. Cocaine, for example, has an elegant dance with dopamine. The normal chemical release of dopamine takes the form of a synchronized relay race. It travels through our brain elegantly from neuron to neuron, like a charging Angarium rider, passing messages through ancient Persia by traveling from station to station. A line of cocaine subversively blocks this dopamine rider. It creates an artificial traffic jam at the neuron, which then forces dopamine to accumulate at the synapse. It builds up, and in the process, imparts a delusional state of euphoria in the brain. It's one of the reasons that some drugs become so addictive, as they distort our brain's mesolimbic dopamine system and feeds and fools our reward systems. This naturally positive chemical messenger, designed to promote good choices and behavior, when overstimulated, can actually cause system-wide destruction and chaos, although Charlie Sheen may strongly disagree. Over time, evolution slowly, carefully and precisely designed dopamine release specifically for bipedal apes that banded together in small groups, with presumably relatively limited daily interactions compared to our modern urban society. A dopamine shot for a positive action within these ancient tribes may have beautifully promoted behavior to preserve the harmony, safety, and security of the individual, or perhaps even the tribe itself. The delicate neurochemistry that slowly evolved to trigger these vitally important behaviors that differentiate us from other early hominids may date back as far as 4.4 million years. Unfortunately, evolution was not necessarily engineering this chemical reward system to take into consideration that our subconsciously operated dopamine response system would eventually need to deal with stimulation in multiple forms and artificial sources, not only from the intense excesses of Pablo Escobar's finest export, but increasingly from the overdose of 1 billion social interactions from a TikToking, Instagramming, Twittering interactive screen becoming glued to our Kardashian-seeking clockwork orange eyeballs 24 hours a day. Recent Harvard research has indicated that every social click, like, tweet, mention, and share we receive or anticipate receiving juices our dopamine levels just a little bit higher. The impact of our technological ideas is that they are increasingly stimulating our reward systems in a manner that our biology wasn't specifically evolved for. Many social media algorithms are seemingly aware that a consequence of their product is to squirt more dopamine into our systems and increases the probability of repetitive and sticky behavior. Some may even be engineered to monetize it by maximizing attention and loyalty through constantly modeling and rewarding consumer motivations and behavior. Abraham Maslow was born in Brooklyn as a son of Ukrainian Jewish immigrants. In 1943, as a professor of psychology at Brooklyn College in the University of New York, it is likely that the horrendous atrocities of Nazism against the Jewish population in Europe both disgusted and plagued his mind professionally and personally, given his background and beliefs. As a psychologist, he wanted to articulate how the human mind functioned and made choices, good, bad, and even horrific ones. To his eye, Sigmund Freud's robotic stimulus and response architecture of human behavior did not resonate completely. He believed there was more subtlety, complexity, and depth to the human psyche than just a DNA gumball machine acting on pre-programmed instincts and responses. As the war raged in Europe, he announced his theory of human motivation as a hierarchy. Visually represented as a pyramid, it appears to build upon each layer as if the pharaoh Khufu erected it from blocks of immutable limestone. Maslow understood that mankind was more fluid than this structure conveyed. His hierarchy of needs was not to be seen as a rigid ladder to climb, but more as an interconnected web of filters buried deep within our synapses. This is where our ideas, choices, and decisions are shuffled, considered, jumbled, and then judged before we enact them into reality. Maslow's hierarchy of mental filters covers the full gamut of our impulses, emotions, fears, relationships, creativity, ego, physiology, morality, and even spirituality. Our genes, environment, subconscious, and life experiences constantly adjust these mental filters to help govern our decisions. Our individual, complex, and often opaque mental algorithms are what makes humanity both predictable and deliciously random when it comes to selecting ideas to follow. The fingerprint-like diversity of a person's mental filters means that different people can look at the exact same idea and arrive at completely divergent conclusions as to its merits. Any objective facts used to support ideas are always subjectively assessed by the complex mental filters of each individual. As a result, defining an objectively good idea is exceedingly difficult, as no two people will have identical mental filters to judge the quality of the idea. Their religion, experiences, beliefs, ego, emotions, fears, biases, needs, and many other subtle parameters will skew the perceptions and acceptance of any given idea. A good idea is, unfortunately, often only in the mind of the beholder. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, however, merely an approximation of human motivations and not an etched blueprint or a rule book to be blindly followed. This model, and many others that have been subsequently proposed, are often only a crude, analog approximation for predicting human behavior and idea selection. The broad parameters may be insightful, but models can be devoid of the essential real-time personal data to be truly meaningful as a precise and predictive tool. Maslow designed his model for a theoretical offline world and not as a GPS tracker for the mind. It is a holistic framework for humanity that lacks the laser-guided insight of a smart bomb to calculate how an individual would judge an idea in a particular context. As blunt as it may have been, for over 50 years it was one of the benchmark ideas on how individual people made choices. However, not any longer. The latest data-driven ideas on targeting individual behavior makes Maslow's model look as fit as a field mouse in the Kentucky Derby. Over the last 30 years, the major industrial internet corporations, such as Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Twitter, Alibaba, and Tencent, have been expanding their ability to predict human behavior using the powerful idea of data-driven digital algorithms. These are based on a symbiosis of big data and highly segmented interaction profiles gleaned from multiple devices and constant interaction. On Facebook alone, every 60 seconds, 510,000 comments are posted, 293,000 statuses are updated, 4 million posts are liked, and 136,000 photos are uploaded. The sheer volume of social data available to drive consumer insight is becoming biblical in scale and insanely valuable to track and monetize. From this Godzilla quantity of consumer interactions, social media companies have the ability to instantly analyze and creatively cross-reference demographic, geographic, and psychographic information gathered on and outside of their platforms, as behavior can be tracked long after people click away from a site. As social media and content companies curate an ever-increasing galaxy of data, they can also continuously deploy and fine-tune their algorithms to both anticipate and promote their desired consumer behavior. Is it sometimes inaccurate and clumsy? Yes. But the leap forward in capability, compared to the sparse data that Maslow had access to, is nothing short of transformative. The real question is how accurate and powerful it will grow to be at predicting and shaping behavior in another 50 years at the current pace of evolution. These dominant internet platforms have become increasingly more powerful and valuable than Maslow ever dreamed of. In 2020, Google, Facebook, and Amazon earned $64.4 billion in combined profit. A significant amount of their success can be credited to how they expertly monetize their increasingly sophisticated, completely proprietary algorithms built on the endless flow of user information and engineered to provide excruciatingly insightful information into the personal choices and behavior of billions of people for advertisers of all shapes and sizes. A key element of creating astronomical value in the digital economy is having an ability to track and anticipate trillions of consumer decisions, to create powerful advertising platforms and subconsciously influence consumers in a predetermined direction to make consumers more predictable in their behavior and therefore increasingly valuable to advertisers and content producers. In the process, digital algorithms give priority to the content shown in social media feeds that maintains attention longer or provokes a response from people to maximize engagement. The completely involuntary response to what we see, feel, and hear in our social media streams is often a small squirt of dopamine into our brains due to our ancient behavior reward system. Just as the gambler excitedly anticipates the next lucky number, our constant desire for likes, comments, posts, and retweets fuels our attention and triggers our emotions. Our neural chemistry automatically rewards our brains with drops of dopamine, and this can reinforce our behavior to constantly return to the social media platform and repeat the desired actions. This mechanism can ultimately play an important commercial role in creating, managing, and monetizing a digital ecosystem. In their published principles, Google suggests that their patented PageRank algorithm is enhanced by the democratization of the internet. As the more open and accessible the available content is, the more importance can be ascribed to it by the voting population of millions or billions of people. Therefore, the accuracy, potency, and value of their search products may be dependent on the freedom and openness of searchable information. Ensuring that people are constantly engaged with the platform may also be a key part of any algorithmic development, accuracy, and value creation. The same can be true for a social media platform that also requires the constant fodder of data streams to be able to monetize their colossal customer bases through their highly segmented advertising services. It has been reported that Facebook collects up to 99% of its revenue from advertising, while Google makes 85%, and Twitter draws in around 86%. For these types of platforms to maintain and competitively attract advertising revenue, it is critical that they have a high frequency and duration of consumer engagement, while simultaneously unleashing the tools to extract, manage, segment, and then sell the insights that come from the endless digital grazing by the online masses. Dopamine is the hidden chemical currency that can be exploited by platforms to encourage people to keep clicking for more. The notion of whether social media is addictive was not completely embraced by leading social media platform executives. When they appeared in front of the US Senate Judiciary Committee in 2020, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg stated that the available data as to whether social media is addictive is inconclusive, and he had not seen any internal research that indicated it was. While Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey suggested that the tools could be addictive, like anything else that the consumers engage with. Many of the key social media platforms will, however, publicly and rightly support the concept of free speech to enable content, ideas, and opinions to flow openly across their platforms. In 2019, Mark Zuckerberg underscored the importance of this principle when he stated that people having the power to express themselves at scale is a new kind of force in the world. In 2020, he reportedly reinforced his views on openness by suggesting, "I just believe strongly that Facebook shouldn't be the arbiter of truth of everything that people say online." While many social media companies do have published policies and active programs designed to limit the content shared on their platforms in areas such as decency and hate, the effectiveness of these policies is debatable, and there is no mechanism to ensure that they are defined and applied consistently across platforms, issues, and countries. There are new social platforms emerging in response to these initiatives, positioned to champion free speech. One such example is US-based social application called Parler, who encourages members to speak freely and express themselves openly without fear of being deplatformed for their views. Ironically, they themselves were deplatformed by Apple, Google, and Amazon in January 2021 after allegedly not moderating violent speech. Undoubtedly, a diametrically opposed world where ideas are censored, edited, curtailed, or punished is not likely to lead to a more positive, balanced, or inclusive society either. Who would select the ideas for either amplification or deletion? On what basis? And on whose agenda? Free speech is the keystone of a healthy democracy, and any single voice, company, or institution monopolizing or controlling messaging consistently builds pathways towards a darker, totalitarian society. This is, by no means, a new idea. In 1786, Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers of the United States, clearly articulated this when he wrote, "Our liberty depends on the freedom of the press, and that cannot be limited without being lost. Ideas need to be forever free."